The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth alongside Phil Duvall. Say hi, Phil.
Hi, Andy.
Phil, we've got a guest today.
I was going to ask you about the person that's here with us.
Right. Folks.
Andy, we're not alone.
So, folks, I'm sure you're familiar with the opening credits to the Brady Bunch. That's basically what Skype looks like to us as we're doing it. I know that it has like the three of us in a row if you happen to be watching us on YouTube rather than listening to us. But it's not linear for us. It's various permutations of
right.
whatever. Yeah. So yeah, it's very strange. But it's not that.
Although I've come to believe, I don't understand why people would watch us when they could just listen to us. Like why you would sit in front of a computer and watch three, handsome for sure, but
You're
really
awfully handsome. You're awfully handsome.
Well, guess
Speaking
what?
of handsome.
Speaking of handsome, who's with us? Andy Roth.
Kevin Ott. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Andy. Hi, Phil.
Hi. I mean, I guess I should introduce Kevin since I introduced Kevin to you.
Yeah. So Kevin, who are you? What's your deal?
That's a weird way to do this.
All right, go ahead, Phil. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I met Kevin. He was working, and I always get it wrong. It's the other Writers Guild. It's not the Writers Guild Association. It's something else. It was the Writers Guild of America.
Foundation.
Is that right? Or what was it called, Kevin?
The Writers Guild Foundation.
Writers Guild Foundation. And Writers Guild Foundation, Kevin was a part of that. He's a friend of Andy, our friend, Jeremy Goldstein.
Hey, Jeremy.
So Jeremy will be listening to this someday, maybe not. And Jeremy may be annoyed that we've put all of Jeremy's friends on our podcast, but never had Jeremy on the podcast. But
intentional, Jeremy.
Oh well.
I've never actually met Kevin in person. He jumped the line, mostly because he doesn't
really
hit
want
me
to
with
do a
Red
show.
Sox.
I really want to do a
stuff.
show with Jeremy because I want to do a show with Jeremy about The Graduate because Jeremy has some very interesting ideas about The Graduate.
Okay.
But anyways, but any show we did with Jeremy would have to be just like crazy theory show, like where he's like, oh, what this show is really about.
Right.
So anyways, Kevin was part of the Writers Guild Foundation, and he organized these interviews with different screenwriters. And so I went with Andy to see the Molyneux sisters, who are two of the writers / producers of Bob's Burgers.
Yeah.
In the back of that comic book store in L.A., which is where Dan Harmon used to do his Dan Harmon thing, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Kevin. That's right. And that's where I met Kevin. And then Chris, my wife, and I went again. We had this double night, Andy. We went and saw, we went up to L.A. We had my very, very young son, was still a babe in swaddling clothes, as it were. And we went and saw Puddles the Clown. We took him to see Puddles. But before that, we went straight to West Hollywood, and we went and saw a writer's panel of the New Girl screenwriting team, which, again, Kevin hosted. And what I want to tell you is we were the only people there with a child, maybe the only people in L.A. with a child. That's how it felt. And everyone was looking at us like very strangely, except one person, Kevin Ott, who was incredibly gracious and kind and very understanding and wonderful and went out of his way for us. And it was just the most delightful, sweet thing for the person who was running the whole thing and who only knew me from was brief encounter with Jeremy. So I was, so I guess what I'm saying is I love Kevin Ott forever.
The irony here is that I absolutely despise children. That's really
well. I know that.
Well,
the thing is, I knew that about you, so I was just amazed by how kind and gentle you were. It was very sweet. But anyways, hey, so now, but Kevin doesn't work for the Writers Guild Foundation anymore.
No.
Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about what you do for a living?
It's fascinating, folks. Buckle up.
Yeah, it's about a year ago I left the Writers Guild Foundation for reasons that shall be undisclosed at this time. And then a few months later, I joined an organization called Geek and Sundry.
Geek and Sundry.
Which is owned by... Okay, so there's Legendary Digital Networks. Legendary, is maybe a lot of you know, is this enormous film production company, distribution company that they're now owned by the Chinese, by a company called Wanda. Anyway, Wanda owns Legendary. Legendary owns Legendary Digital Networks. Legendary Digital Networks consists of Amy Poehler's Smart Girls,
Nice.
Nerdist, and Geek and Sundry.
Awesome.
All three of which are just sort of digital production companies. Geek and Sundry was started by an actress that a lot of people may have heard of. A lot of people may not have heard of her. She's one of those people who maybe you haven't heard of her, but if you have heard of her, you totally know who she is, and you totally know all her fans, and that's Felicia Day, my boss, a very cool lady. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And yeah, she started Geek and Sundry. Legendary bought it. And now what we do is we make a variety of shows for the internet. Shows like Co-optitude, which stars Felicia and her brother badly playing video games. Another show called Super Happy Fun Awesome Party Game Time. That might be the title of it. And
You're
that involves
forgiven.
playing party games drunkenly. Another show called Signal Boost. It's great. We also have a very big Twitch presence where we play video games and board games and role-playing games on the internet. It's a model that's not currently totally understood, but we're trying to forge ahead as best we can, and we're doing, I think, a really good job. And it's a really fun, cool place to work.
Nice.
That's cool.
I will.
And
not
you're a person
say...
who's a movie geek type person, so this is all very fun for you.
It is.
I mean, not that every day is the easiest day ever, but you're participating in a culture that you appreciate and enjoy.
I mean, yeah, exactly. It's a fun place to work. It's very fandom intensive. So I work with a lot of people who are cosplayers in their spare time. Who run Dungeons and Dragons campaigns in their own time, things like that.
Right.
Whereas at the Writers Guild, it was very movie and TV specific. Now it's a little bit broader. It includes movie and TV, but it also includes, as I said, video games, board games, which is a huge explosion now, role-playing games. Our most popular show, and it's one of those things where, we live in an age where someone can be hugely, massively popular and you've never heard of them.
Right.
Right. Because of YouTube, because of the internet. Yeah. And right now, our most popular show, and it's massively popular, but I had never heard of it before I started working there, is called Critical Role. And it's essentially a bunch of voice actors, some of you whom you may have heard of. The most famous one is actually Ashley Johnson, who had small roles in the Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Chrissy. Chrissy Seaver from Growing Pains.
Yeah. She was also she was in Joss Whedon's Much Ado About Nothing.
Yes.
And now she's on Blind Spot. She's probably the most famous person on that show.
Excuse me. She was in What Women Want. She played Mel Gibson's daughter in What Women Want.
There you go. Yeah.
Mel Gibson.
And she had that line in the Avengers every time
the one
we talk
what,
about.
What was that about?
Captain America saved my life.
Oh, it was beautiful.
It sounds like I'm making fun of her, but I actually love her.
Oh. And didn't you do a short-lived tennis sitcom called Prodigy back in the 90s? Does that sound right?
Holy shit. You are such a huge nerd.
I'm a TV nerd, so when you start talking about like cosplaying and like I never even know how to pronounce it, I'm always like, do you pronounce the S? Is it cosplaying? Is it cosplaying?
Is it
so I never
dressing
know.
as Bill Cosby?
You're cosplaying something, I think,
or undressing as Bill Cosby, huh?
Wow, no,
is that not?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Boo, Duvall.
So it's that kind of podcast.
Yeah, apparently. So Kevin, you said some very interesting things. And we do have a topic for this evening, but this is fantastic. I love what's happening. First, Kevin, I want to start by saying I'm sure it's not the first time anyone has ever said it, but it's definitely the first time I have ever heard the phrase a huge presence on Twitch. That's a new.
It's the first time I'd ever heard of Twitch, so clearly it was the first time for me. Yeah.
So yes. So and this is going to sound like I'm making fun, and I'm not. Congrats on that. That's awesome. Second, and
I had nothing to do with it, but yes.
And just to sort of prove my nerd street cred to, I guess, your boss and your.
It wasn't called Prodigy. It was called Phenom.
Thanks, Phil. Awesome.
Sorry.
Well done.
One season.
To prove my nerd street cred to your boss and I suppose your coworkers and you, who doesn't know me that well just yet. I remember Felicia Day from Originally, as I mentioned to you, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, she was one of the potential Slayers in the final season, and she was great. She was good old NPH's love interest in Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. Phil, you said you hadn't seen it. Get your life together. It's 45 minutes long, and you're going to love it. There's nothing not to love.
Yeah.
45 minutes. Watch it with your wife.
Okay.
The both of you will love it.
It's everything. Yeah, it's everything everyone says it is. It's beautiful.
I have also watched every episode of The Guild, and I need you to ask her why there isn't more. That's what I want to know. I want to know why there isn't more of The Guild, because it is.
It's funny. Nobody ever asks me that on Twitter or Facebook or literally every social media channel that there is. When is the next season of The Guild coming out?
That's right.
When are we going to see more of The Guild?
That's right. That's right. You know why? Sometimes, basically what I'm saying is Felicia Day's life is no longer her own. She belongs to the fans now, and The Guild is what the fans want. There we go.
Yeah.
Felicia,
Wow.
I'm
She's
sorry.
I don't-
I'm sure you're a wonderful person.
I don't know who Felicia Day is. I know who she is now that you've said all these things, but then I looked her up and I was like, nope. But Ashley Johnson, I know her whole filmography apparently. So
Think of all.
it's some
is the
serious
world we live in.
savant.
That's true.
No, you're right, and
That's
it's
true.
problematic. I think it's problematic, but whatever. On the other hand, so I have a theory about this, and I'd like to know y'all's opinions before we talk about our main topic, which is we have this concern that everything is being really segmented and that someone can be wildly popular and not be known nationally. The idea of a national identity and a national sort of pointing towards one person or one, like the Beatles. And the Beatles did happen, and it is real that they drove people crazy. But who they really drove crazy was one generation of white people in America. But for that one generation of white people in America, like, they really were all tuned into one sort of culture all at the same time. So we bemoan the loss of a culture that really never it existed, but it existed for one generation of white people. Like, for instance, we bemoan the loss of albums. Albums have only been around since the mid-'50s.
Yeah.
So the first concept album, where it was like an album of songs that were all connected onto an album recorded for the purpose of making an album, Frank Sinatra made it in the 50s. So this is like, but we have this idea of like the death of this, or segmentation of culture. You mean how it was for thousands and thousands of years, when if you lived in Kentucky, you knew this fiddler, but if you lived in Florida, you had this person who played in a jug band, and it was a completely different situation. And no, you know what I mean? Like, I'm kidding, but I'm not. Like, It was completely segmented anyway. And now, instead of segmenting based on location, we just segment based on
interest,
which does add a new element. It's not old, it's new. And I do still worry about it, because what we do when we get older is we worry that things are going to get worse because of entropy and whatnot. Ragnarok.
Wow.
But
you're such a Marvel fanboy. Anyway, I have thoughts
I just
on
like
that.
Greek mythology, or Norse mythology.
It's
but
like,
go ahead.
You must not like Greek mythology that much, tough
No,
guy.
I like Norse mythology. I like Norse mythology more than Greek mythology, because everyone's like, so we're all going to die and everything's terrible, but we do this anyway? Yeah, pretty much. Okay,
I'm probably doing something I shouldn't, because I'm going to mention a book on our podcast and who reads. But if you like Norse mythology, you should read American Gods, because it's wonderful, and it's have you read it, Kevin?
Okay. No.
I have read it. You could read it, or you could just simply wait for the television show, which is coming very soon.
That's true. That's true.
When you
lot
watch things on TV, you don't have to read them anymore.
Exactly. So
who's got time?
I'm going to remember you said that when the Dark Tower
Kevin.
horror show starts up.
Ugh.
Kevin, thoughts?
But I've never read the book, so it won't be a problem.
Oh,
Kevin,
gross.
Andy tried to get me to read The Hunger Games,
yeah,
and I was like, but I've
You're
seen
fine.
the movies. He's like,
you're
I've
fine.
seen the movies.
You're fine.
No, I mean, I already know I am. Trust me, because here's the deal. It's very simple. I asked him one simple question, and the answer was clear. I said, when I read the books, can I look at and hear Jennifer Lawrence do things? And he was like, no. And I was like, conversation over.
Yeah,
Like-
the Hunger Games books are like the Hunger Games movies. Rather, are such. The Hunger Games books, I feel, and Andy, I don't know if you agree. I feel they get progressively worse.
Sure.
I almost don't blame Suzanne Collins for that, because by the third book, I feel as though it reads as though I can feel her publisher breathing down her neck as I read it, because it feels like such a rushed book. And I know those books were sort of instantly popular, so I wonder if I wonder if that's like a real thing. If they were just so in a hurry to get this book to market, that's why the third book just seems like, okay, we gotta have stuff happening.
Yeah.
We gotta have stuff happening.
Yeah, so I do have an
Is
opinion
it
on that.
possible that when she didn't have Battle Royale to rip off, that she ran out of source material and had to write her own stuff, and then it got worse? Is that possible?
Yeah, because Battle Royale was written by Shakespeare and is inviolate, and no one else.
I don't
can do
care.
anything.
Andy. I'm now just saying things. I'm being a troll. It's awful. I shouldn't even say these things.
You are actually a bad person, Kevin. Would you like to
I am.
step
I don't
in
even
for
own
Phil, and you and I can?
I don't even own a Mac.
From now on?
Who's Phil? I don't even know who Phil is.
Right?
There's nobody else here.
So here's my thought.
I would be worried, Kevin, except literally every single time we have a co-star on or a guest host, Andy is like, hey, so do you want to do this show with me instead of Phil?
It's true.
And guess what? I'm still here.
Yeah, one of these times I won't be kidding, though, and you'll never know until it happens.
I had to murder Keith Porcaro, but I'm still here. Okay.
It's true.
Go.
So
Andy, go ahead.
I think I agree with you with this exception. The thing that I don't think got worse, the thing that I think got better, is the story. The writing feels rushed, the characterizations feel rushed, but the story, and even and if I can parse these things out and separate them, even the plot feels rushed. But the story, like I flat out love what she did with like the allegory, and I buy it. I buy in totally. Nice. And yeah, I mean the oh my God, and it goes from oh my God, we have to survive the arena, to oh my God, the Capitol is terrible, to oh my God, what do we like the argument for Mussolini is that he made the trains run on time. Like, what is it? In power abhors a vacuum. What do we do with this, right? Like who are the types of people who pursue power in any situation, and especially this one? And I think that even as the writing, and I agree with you on this point too. I do not blame Suzanne Collins, because you don't forget how to write. I think she does even when that is not as strong as it could be, I think she does a beautiful job of driving her underlying points home. So
I agree.
That's my feeling. And I'll say this. I think the quadrilogy of movies is one of the better adaptations since Lord of the Rings. I really do. I think they do a really nice job of it. Even that first half of the last book, which is like, why is this book being split into two? I buy that it has a reason to exist, which Harry Potter 7 Part 1, I don't always think. I don't always think.
I still find that first half of the second book, that first movie, I find it very kind of forgettable, the movie anyway. Okay. Because the experience of watching it was not a profound one for me.
Sure.
But getting back to the first part of what you were saying, I will always be amazed. The end, and like, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it. And I'm very, since I've taken my current job at Geek and Sundry, I'm very big on spoiler alerts, because people will assume that anything you say is a spoiler and get furiously angry at you. So spoilers, for the end of the Hunger Games. The end of the books is exactly the same as the end of the movies, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think that was possibly the most daring thing I've ever seen done in popular culture.
Yes.
What a profound, and I'm surprised it made it into the movies.
Me too.
Which, the books were just as mass market as the movies. I mean, the books were also for everybody, but I would be willing, if we were to look at the numbers, I'm sure more people saw the movies than read the books.
Sure.
And so just in terms of sheer numbers, I'm amazed that survived, that ending survived. And that the notion of just saying that, as you say, like, the kind of people who seek power, and the notion of tackling class in the way that it did.
Yeah.
Because the President Coin, who was seeking to take power from President Snow, right, was the same social class as Snow. It's like sort of the same thing. And to come with me a faster, replace the impressive person who is a member of the with a less person who will remain a member of the class.
Kevin,
The futility of that.
hold up, Kevin,
really great.
Kevin, hold on. You got to say this again, because I bet it's good, but you broke up. So I'm going to put my phone here. When I take it away, give it a second, and then just give me the discussion you just had about class and coin versus Snow. So, all right, Phil and I will be quiet, and then.
Okay, so what was about was it tackled class in a way that not a lot of things in popular culture do, because ultimately President Coin was of the same class as President Snow. She was of that same sort of ruling a privileged class,
right?
And for something to say that, you know, somebody who is like, so President Snow is of this class that does not understand the underclass, that does not have a real, like, you know, realistic view of what it's like to live in the 13 districts. Let's just replace him with someone else who also does not have that same perspective, who also, you know, but she sort of, like, she claims to understand, she claims to be more aware of what the underclass is experiencing, but ultimately she doesn't, because she's from that same class.
Yep.
And for the book to make a statement like that, and to say that you know, Coin might be different on the outside, but ultimately she's the same. Ultimately, she's grown in the same garden as Snow.
Yeah.
That was incredibly brave, and that was I'm really impressed that made it to the final film.
Yeah, I agree. Phil, thoughts?
I'm just not I'm not surprised, because like a power to the people, like the whole system is corrupt. Like, what a popular notion right now. It just doesn't surprise me. I mean, it doesn't surprise me the way it surprised you, but I could be wrong. I also could be more like, I don't know. I'm more something than you. I don't know what it is yet. I haven't figured it out. But like, I was like, yeah, I mean, like, we're talking about, and by the way, I appreciate your spoiler, like your desire to be careful with that. I like that with everything. I'm like that with book. I don't spoil the ending of The Sopranos for people who haven't seen it. I don't like, and it's been over for 15 years. I don't like when people do this.
Casablanca, if you haven't seen it.
Listen, I was listening to a Louis C.K. bit, or I was watching Louis C.K. do a bit, and he talked about the last book, the last page of Grapes of Wrath, the book. And I was like, dude, haven't read it yet. And it's like, I get that that's on me, but a little bit like, who cares? Like, there's no such thing as and some people say, no, there's a statute of limitations. I just disagree. Like, well, except when I don't. So, I mean, he's a comedian, and obviously he's the best comedian alive, so whatever. He gets to do these things. But I remember that moment I was like, but I was going to read that book too. But anyways.
Were you, though? Were you?
I've been gonna read it for a long time now, Kevin. I've been almost reading East of Eden for 4 years. It's in the trunk of my car. It's in the East of Eden is in the trunk of my car. Just
super
almost
easy to
getting
read
read.
From the trunk of your car.
Just almost getting read.
It's getting read as we speak.
By the trunk of your car.
No, it's not. But it's almost getting read.
Well done.
So, anyways, I don't know. But I didn't read the book, so it's hard for me to compare. Like I mean, it all made sense. Like, I thought it was well done, but I also felt like I could see it coming. But that's okay. I liked everybody in it. Mostly, I just want to talk about Philip Seymour Hoffman for hours. But that's not why we're here. We're actually here to talk about Marvel.
It's true. Last thing I want to say before we dive in.
Please.
And this is nothing other than I like both of you and I like our audience, and I want to share something that is making me very excited right now. There is a book, again with the book. There's a book that the release of which is more exciting to me, literally, than any movie this year. And it is coming out in less than 2 weeks. And that is the third book of Justin Cronin's vampire trilogy, The City of Mirrors. Book 1 is The Passage. Book 2 is The 12.
Oh.
And if you have not, these are books that are literally, we always say this, like, literally impossible to film. each book would have to be 7 movies. Like, might be more impossible to film than The Dark Tower. That's going to be a horror show. But anyway, I am so excited for this book. I'm like beside myself. I'm here, and then like right next to me, just off screen, is like me, who is also excited. I literally beside myself for this book coming out May 24th. If you start now and you don't sleep, you have time to read both books. They're worth it.
I've read the first. It's very, very good.
Oh, the 12 is so good. It world expanded. It's and it's not a world that necessarily, shall we say, needed expanding, because it was like the definition of epic already. It's superb. And interestingly enough, stellar audiobooks as well. Audiobooks. The SS
You're so weird. He's so weird with the audiobooks.
I drive a lot. I have a commute.
Long commute. Yeah,
I do too. But I do as well. But I like, but it's not the direction I go. But maybe I could start. That's a thing.
So
I listened to the Harry Potter books on audio.
Oh, nice.
When I was driving across country.
And they're great. They're really good.
Lovely. That British gentleman, Irish.
Jim Dale.
Stephen Fry.
Oh.
Wait, what? Isn't it Stephen Fry?
Stephen Fry did the British versions, and Jim Dale did the American versions.
Stop! We're both right. Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. I also like Jim Dale because he's the narrator from Pushing Daisies. R.I.P.
Okay.
Yes. No segue at all.
So let's talk about
Marvel.
What I'm interested in talking about, and I'm glad that Kevin's here, is what I'm interested in talking about is, and Kevin had a very specific angle on this that we want to approach.
Yes.
One of the things that we've talked about it a little bit on our show before, but what I really am interested in is, I was watching the most recent Captain America Civil War.
Spoilers from here on out, folks. Spoilers from here on out.
Spoilers from here on out?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't actually planning on saying anything spoilered.
I just don't want us to.
I wasn't planning on saying anything spoiler, but that's fine. You're right. We should acknowledge that. Spoilers.
Yeah.
It's fine. Let's just talk. You're right.
Yeah.
I read one review that called it Avengers 2.5. I think that's an accurate statement. But what was really interesting to me while I was watching it, I am continually amazed by the intentional expansion of this universe. Some people, and some of our friends, Andy, our friend Daniel is one of them, who oftentimes sort of comments like the possibility that this is like, it feels like it's never ending and it's a way to make money. Well, certainly it's a way to make money, and here's the deal. Make money if they're going to be this well done. Make all the money you want. Charge me if it's going to be great. But what's really interesting to me is what gets ignored when we talk about it like that is we ignore the fact that we're not making endless sequels. We're making a bunch of different chapters in a large story. And we're like, so for instance, in Captain America, when Ant-Man just shows up, there's no introduction to Ant-Man because we know Ant-Man because there was a whole movie about him last July and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And et cetera, et cetera. That there's this expanding, like, and people come and they go, and it's a serial. It's a serial stretched out over different movies in different points of view and different characters, and some are better than others, and some are worse than others. I'm looking at you, Thor 2, craptastic Thor 2, but. I didn't actually care for Captain America 1 very much, but the movies are like really doing this thing, and I want us to kind of. I almost said I want us to marvel at that, but that's not. I stopped.
It's a little on the nose. It's a little precious.
I didn't mean for because I didn't. Once I read that, I stopped.
Little twee. Okay, I'm done.
I stopped. I want us to. I'm just curious as to how, and Kevin, you had a specific theory about this that I found really interesting, but I hope we could just spend a little time talking about this because I think it's fantastic.
This movie rules. This movie rules. Full stop.
It's okay. First of all, the movie is excellent. Excuse me. I'm not sure. I know I have friends who think Winter Soldier was better. I don't know what I think about that yet. But we're not here to talk about value judgments or qualitative judgments.
Right.
Thank you.
And both movies are great. But Phil, like a lot of what you said is really accurate, and I think that. Excuse me.
Some of it not so much, but what we won't focus on.
Some of it, but a lot of it was.
I was surprised to hear you say that you were not a fan of the first Captain America movie.
Me too.
I think the first Captain America movie certainly suffers for the comparison to the second two. But I would not mention it in the same breath as Thor 2, which
you're right.
I like Thor 2. I like it kind of apologetically. It's one of the many movies that I like, but I get why people don't like it. Anyway, so one thing that people say a lot, at least at the sort of like corporate tentpole level, the age of television that we're in, which a lot of people call golden age, and I think that's fair, even though I feel like we say we're in a golden age of a lot of things, and perhaps a golden age of golden ages, and the term is loose meaning. Anyway,
most of those are stupid. We're actually in a golden age of television.
We really are.
The third golden age to be precise. But yes.
Yeah, fair enough.
And the way that because so much of the best media that we consume is serial media, now we are seeing the big studios adopt that and and give us that serial media in film as well. I think of like Breaking Bad, the greatest show ever. And if you disagree with me, you're wrong. And Phil clearly openly disagrees with me.
It's fine.
Wow.
What else? It's a phenomenal show. It's a phenomenal show. Continue with your point.
We could make a show about other things Phil is wrong about.
We have.
There aren't enough episodes in our lifetime for the things that I'm wrong about.
Me too.
That's the nature of I sit back and forth a lot, so you'll see me sort of moving my screen unless you're listening to this in your car. You look at Breaking Bad, and we now follow the fates of, for instance, Civil War, the fates of Tony and Steve, in much the same way that we would follow the fates of Walt and Jesse in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Whereas in years past, we had the sequel, but the sequel was not really an installment of a story. The sequel used to be sort of, and even as recently as something like Toy Story, which I think used sequels really, really well. It was more just, hey, here's another situation these characters are in, another sort of self-contained situation these characters are in, and you could see that sequel and enjoy it without really having seen the first movie or the previous movie. And now we're in an age where you really, I don't know. There was a woman behind me when I saw Civil War who had not seen any of the prior movies, none of them. And her husband said, just sort of sit back and enjoy it. And she seemed to, but I would love to sort of be in her head for those 2 hours and sort of experience the level at which she was enjoying it, which had to have been much different from me because I came into it with all this knowledge.
Right. It certainly deepens your love of the characters when you watch Lethal Weapon 2 and you've seen Lethal Weapon 1. But you don't have any problem understanding what's going on if you haven't seen the first.
And in some cases where things get more and more out there, I don't know. I mean, like Breaking Bad's a good example. It eases you into that show. Like the last couple seasons, when every episode ends, you're just like, I need to lie down. And
I watched
when
every episode standing up in season 5. I couldn't sit down.
And when it was, and I couldn't, and frankly, and it is it's not my favorite show, but I think it's in the it's in the top 5, and it's maybe top 10 world all time, which is when you think about all the shows, it's great. But honestly, I couldn't wait for it to be over. Like when the show ended, I was like, thank God, because I can't take this anymore. Whereas but there is an interesting thing that happens where it's put the frog in the pot and then turn the heat on, and you don't realize what's happening to you till it's too late. But that could also go the other direction, where a show can get so bad, like How I Met Your Mother. How I Met Your Mother, where for some people, mine was The Office. The Office got so bad, but I never jumped, and I stayed till the very end. I let myself burn to a crisp. Yeah, I let myself be burned to a crisp, boiled, flavorless by the end of that show, and being grateful for any little meager things. But then other shows like How I Met Your Mother and, of course, The Simpsons, I bailed on a long time ago. And but I mean, it's interesting. So sequels, the big knock on them is because they just are trying to, oh, you like these characters, let's see what we can do. It's like they bank on people's goodwill and the fact that people are already in to some degree. to see what'll happen.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens season by season. Like season by season, they might ratchet it up on a show. But what's happening in these serialized shows you're talking about, Breaking Bad, Sopranos, The Wire, blah, 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 is that Mad Men, is that they can ratchet it up because they know that there is a past history, that there's a past that you've developed and a relationship you've developed with these characters, which has been true, by the way, for shows all along, but they're using it carefully. And it seems like what you're saying is that that's what the Marvel Universe is doing now. I don't know if there's other examples we have of that. There's certainly not, to my mind, better examples than that.
I think Harry Potter is probably the closest that I would mention.
Right. And Harry Potter is very specifically following the books.
Yes. And I actually thought those movies, I'm in the minority here, and I fully expect a lot of people to disagree, but I feel like there was I don't know what you call it in math, where things do this.
Oh, yeah. Articulate it for people who aren't watching.
When
the arcs cross, essentially?
Yeah, essentially. Because I think it was around book 4 for Harry Potter that when I read book 4, I enjoyed it, but I thought it was the first time I thought, this is too much book. This is too much stuff. And then when I saw the movie, I thought, wow, the movie really, it condensed that story extraordinarily well. And after that point, I thought the movies became better than the books. Although before that point, I thought the books were better than the movies. And the movies, those first couple movies served as nice visual counterparts to the books. They were not bad by any means, and they were very, very enjoyable. But they didn't grab me as much as the books. But by the time we got to the end, certainly the last 2 movies, which didn't need to be 2 movies, but they were certainly less overstuffed than the final book.
I wonder because you make an interesting point about the Harry Potter series, but I wonder if that's because I can think of 2 other examples and only 2, and the first is the Hunger Games, and the other is Game of Thrones, right?
Game of Thrones, yep.
But I wonder. I mean, 3. That's certainly, it might be the beginning of a trend, especially if they actually go through with this behemoth, totally unwieldy adaptation of the Dark Tower.
It's all Andy can think about. Andy has not been able to stop talking about Dark Tower.
Yeah,
he is so. No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not making fun of you.
Dark Tower, Dark Tower, Dark Tower.
It's the most terrified I've been of an adaptation in a very, very long time, because I really like those books.
Much like Game of Thrones, I have not read any of the books and have zero investment in them being portrayed appropriately. So I'm just free to go take it as whatever it is, which doesn't mean I'm better off. I mean, I'm better off than you right this moment. I might not be better off than you once they come out. Because then if it's bad, when it's bad, the only example I'll have of Dark Tower will not be good.
I want to back up for a minute or two because there's something else that I think is even larger that's going on here. Kevin, I agree with everything you're saying, except clearly the best television show of all time is Fraggle Rock. But other than that,
that's fair.
You just trolled us with trolls.
You're welcome.
He didn't mean it. He was trolling you.
Okay, they're called Gorgs. Okay.
Oh man, working for a professional, we're talking with a professional geek about this stuff is not. He's above my pay, way above my pay grade.
Yeah, we're out of our depth. But there's something else that's going on here, and I think that it's not just that Breaking Bad is a good example. I think it's the best example because, or one of the best examples, because it's not just Breaking Bad. It's now Better Call Saul, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you say, yes, we follow Walt and Jesse, if they did a Walt and Jesse spinoff, sure, I would. I don't know how they would do that because spoilers, blah blah blah. But I would absolutely watch that. Yeah. I would watch a Skyler spinoff.
Yeah, but to be fair, but okay, go ahead, finish your sentence.
Say it.
Just part of that's just because we trust Vince Gilligan as a creator now. I mean.
That's exactly my point.
Okay, go ahead.
Make a very similar point, but yeah.
Okay. I wasn't going to make that point at all. I'm just the guy who walks into the trap, and here I find myself. Why is that food hanging from that tree?
Exactly right.
Chewie, no.
So
It's interesting you said
Just
Shrek,
to make
and then
Chewbacca
that's
a
the
dog.
Star Wars reference you went with.
Okay.
Just when you thought I was gonna zig, I zagged.
You did.
Points for originality, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think because we have followed. We followed Mike. We followed Jimmy Saul. We followed this actor, right? Why? Because because most people who are watching Better Call Saul probably not only watch Breaking Bad, but might know Bob Odenkirk from other things because he's been in a ton of stuff, and he's one of these people that whenever he shows up, he's great. And Jonathan Banks is great, and Vince Gilligan is great, and what we have here is, so I'm just gonna everything that I'm thinking, and then we can parse out the stuff that is useless, and talk about the stuff that isn't, if anything is left. There are two things that are sort of happening in my head, right? One is Captain America: Civil War, as Phil has noted, is sort of Avengers 2.5. It's a ton of people, but this happens when you don't have to pay somebody millions of dollars because they're a movie star. This has been happening for decades in comic books, because all you have to do is draw them in and write some dialogue for them. So Batman and Superman, like, you don't have to pay actors millions of dollars to have them punch each other. You can do it in a comic book just because you feel like it. You can. Plus, there are multiple Iron Mans going on at once. There's the Uncanny X-Men. I'm sure I just offended a bunch of people if it's the Uncanny whatever it is. But like
it's the Uncanny Avengers, actually.
Okay. The Amazing Spider-Man, the Spectacular Spider-Man, you know what I mean? Spider-Man, right? Mm-hmm. There's Miles Morales. There's Peter Parker. There's all these different. There's Wally West, Barry Allen. All these different Flashes, right? And people just accept it. And people accept it even when it gets weirder, like two Flashes in the same frame in the same story because they're from different universes and all this stuff, and we just accept it because this is a comic book, right? And Marvel has been building up to this for years. They've been building up to with the post credits scenes and stuff like that. Just drop you in with Chris Evans cameoing with one line in Thor: The Dark World as Steve Rogers as Captain America, like just getting you ready. Yeah, right. Yeah, truth. Like
wouldn't take a lot.
getting you ready for just like, oh no, these people really inhabit the same world, and what it's doing is it's almost like the soap opera. Like, this is a story that's never going to end, right? None of us will live to see the last Marvel movie. None of us will live to see the last Star Wars movie. But Star Wars is sort of, as wonderful as it is, it's its own sort of, it's not an unusual franchise. It's just a lot of really successful movies and some that weren't, but financially successful. But what's happening with Marvel is something different. And I think it ties into, and this is the other thing that's going on in my head, it ties into this decades-long struggle between theaters and movies. We got to get people out of their homes. We got to get them to the theater. We got to get them buying popcorn. We got to get the butts in seats. Versus, no, let's have the family gather around the television and enjoy themselves. And when you watch the Errol Flynn Adventures of Robin Hood, the picture is square. It's not widescreen, right? CinemaScope, right? Or CinemaScope. Well, widescreen came along because people stopped going to the theaters, or they were worried about people stopping going to the theaters because we had television, and boom, now everything's in color. And oh, we'll go back to the movies. Now TV's in color. Well, now look at John Wayne, riding a horse through Monument Valley in widescreen. Okay, well, now we have multiple channels. Okay, well, now 3D and stuff like, and smell-o-vision and stuff that didn't work. But at its heart, what I think is interesting is movies are short stories. They're short stories. And television shows, when they're done in a serial fashion, can be novels. And so it becomes like, do you like short stories more, or do you like novels more? And what Marvel has done incredibly is they have brought that novel aspect. Oh no, I'm reading something and just here comes another plot thread and that's it. They brought that to movies.
Yeah, and I think part of how they did that was by mimicking television, because if you think, traditionally television is more the writer's medium, more considered the writer's medium, and film has been more considered the director's medium, right? We don't have auteur theory when we talk about television, but we have some of the most famous writers that most people know over the past 20 years or so are probably television writers. People like Aaron Sorkin, creators like that.
Sure.
And it's also looked at, like I said, it's looked at as a writer's medium. The writers flock to television because they get treated better. They have more control over the story. Nobody's going to take their vision of the original script and turn it into something that's completely on its head, right? And I think what Marvel has done is, in a way, they've sort of flipped that, because what they did was, you can sort of track, if you track the directors they chose, right? Not the writers, but the directors they chose. They generally tended to choose directors with very strong storytelling chops, but not necessarily directors who you would associate with a very distinct visual style.
Yeah.
Joss Whedon, Shane Black, James Gunn, right? These are all very strong storytelling directors, but you'd be hard pressed to say, what's Joss Whedon's visual style, right?
Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah. Kenneth Branagh
Kenneth Branagh to bring Thor to life, to me, is a brilliant choice. A brilliant choice.
In a way, though, he's kind of the exception, because Thor is, I find him to be a very, very visual director.
He is, but he doesn't have as distinct. Wait, he is, but he doesn't have as distinct a visual sense as, say, Tim Burton or Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino. I won't say the Coen brothers, although even with the Coen brothers, there's almost a richness. I mean, they've been working with Deakins for so long now, and they have they have constructed a world as the show Fargo. Now you've got Fargo, which has been influenced by the movies, which are influenced by anyways, it goes.
Interestingly, Phil, even if, and I may agree with you anyway about Branagh being an exception here, but we might have our first true exception with Black Panther and Ryan Coogler, who was the director of Creed, which was an extraordinarily visually striking movie with a lot of. I mean, who knows if they're his flourishes, because that's the only movie of his I've seen.
But what I hear Kevin saying, and Joss Whedon is an exception here, but Joss Whedon made the big tentpole pictures, the Avengers movies.
Right.
Is you have you don't have what we would call auteurs, or you don't have the hugest name, distinct people. I mean, Joss Whedon is a cottage industry unto himself. Sure, but all the other ones are basically really good working directors, right? Like even Branagh. Branagh came out with a bang in the 80s, but really at this point he's just he's a working director. He made Cinderella, which by the way was an incredibly serviceable adaptation of Cinderella. I was surprised by how wonderful it was done. But he is more of a director now than an actor. I mean, you see Branagh more as a director than an actor. Sure. And he wasn't sure which one he was for a while, and he's made that decision. But in Whedon making the big one, that makes sense. But you've got all these guys that too. I mean, you look at the way that if you're going to go back to the TV shows, David Chase, creator of Sopranos, and Sopranos, regardless of, I clearly think it's the best show of all time, but it's also the one that actually set into place a lot of the things that we're talking about in terms of movie quality. I mean, cinematographically, you look at those movies and you go these TV shows, and you're like, it's shot like a movie. Yeah. This is beautiful. Yeah. This is quality. But David Chase would always, he set that tone, and I'm sure it was before him. I'm sure other people did it too. But he would always direct the main episode, the first episode, and the most important episodes of the season. Whedon would direct these ones, and then bring in the other guys, right? And you kind of have that. Vince Gilligan will direct the finale. Right. But you're going to have these guys, and so I find that interesting, that you'd see that pattern. But they're doing it. They're doing it over they're doing it over a. I just am really. I find myself in a strange position of being an apologist for Marvel, as someone who doesn't read comic books, and feels really strange defending a movie studio, because it just seems like a weird thing to do. They're not asking me to. But I 100% legit, and I know there's a bunch of people who are just looking at this with huge dollar signs in their eyes. I believe it, and good for them. They're making that money, so okay. But I really believe, based on the quality and the style that's happened, the quality of the movies and the way in which they've moved forward, I actually believe that that the Marvel people, the people who are behind this plan, are excited to think creatively about how to put forward this large-scale universe creation on a movie level. Like, I believe that they're like, of course they're financially motivated, but they're also incredibly creatively motivated in my mind. Because the work's good.
This is what I was saying. You were like because we watched Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul because we trust Vince Gilligan. I think there are plenty of people who are not comic book readers who now, even if they don't know his name, they trust Kevin Feige.
I trust him. I'm not a comic book reader.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Feige, 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 Feige. Also,
well, I think I want to go further, Phil, into what you were saying, and Kevin, I'd love your take on this because I know you watched at least one of these shows more than Phil did. The
You're about to say Buffy.
The strength of Joss Whedon, best exemplified, I think, in Buffy, but throughout all of his shows is bringing together a disparate and diverse cast into a cohesive whole that pays off in unexpected ways. So, of course, he was an inspired choice for the tentpole, oh no, I'm going to pull this in from this movie and this in from this movie, and I'm going to wrap it all together, and it's going to come out right. And as he got burned out, I don't think it's an accident that the Russo brothers, who directed Winter Soldier and this Civil War, and are taking care of the next two Avengers movies, they came from Community, right? Mm-hmm. They directed a ton of Community episodes, and these are shows that when I think of, like, man, this thing pays off, but not for 3 seasons. This thing pays off, but from an entirely different character, from a point of view you never thought of. Like, I think of Community, which I didn't know, like, oh, that's a Russo brothers episode, but, like, I think of Community, and I think of the work of Joss Whedon. Not because they're the only people doing it, or even necessarily because they're the best ever at it, but because they're really good at it. And I think that this is something interesting. That's
Yeah, and I think it's it's reasonable to sort of be concerned that as the Russos essentially almost take over the entire franchise, because they've just directed the last 2 Captain America movies, and now they're going to direct the next 2 Avengers movies, and who knows where they sort of how they work in the sort of brain trust in the story department there at Marvel, whether they say, like, let's do this, let's not do this. I think it's reasonable to be concerned that much like with J.J. Abrams getting both Star Wars and Star Trek, with the too much power being concentrated, too much creative power being concentrated in one spot. I think that's a reasonable concern. I think that if it's going to be concentrated anywhere, those 2 guys are a pretty good place to concentrate it. And you can see that in the difference between the last 2 movies that they made, these 2 Captain America movies. Because while Winter Soldier it had that very sort of Bourne Identity sort of action aesthetic to it. Mm-hmm. While that was present in Civil War, it was not all we saw. They're really, really excellent at not only adopting a variety of different styles, but at adopting a variety of different styles and making them all work together cohesively. Right. So not only are they doing that Whedon thing of being able to manage all of these disparate characters, they're good at it as directors by being able to manage the styles of those characters. There in Civil War specifically, there were a lot of moments about it. The very different fighting style of Black Panther, the difference between the marketplace fight, the marketplace action sequence in the beginning, and the big airport sequence in the middle of the film.
Interesting.
They're really good at managing those disparate aspects, and in a way they're sort of like Whedon 2.0. because while he was very good at managing the different characters, like I said, he's not a very visual director. And the biggest complaint about the first Avengers movie was that it did not have a great look. I thought it looked fine, but I do sort of sympathize with people who thought it looked like a TV show. And I think what you're seeing is Marvel sort of coming of age and taking that, that ability to manage different elements and moving it up, and now sort of wedding that ability to something more auteurish, and creating a distinctive visual style in addition to a distinctive sort of ability to just make a whole bunch of really good movies in a row that all connect to each other.
The fact that they're choosing to do both at the same time, not choosing to, because who would choose against it? Oh, I don't want to make a good thing that's also this and that. But like the fact that there just seems to be such a combination of laser-like focus and also room for creativity and experimentation at the same time. And I mean, there was a little piece of me died when you just said they're going to make 2 more Avengers movies, only because I don't see how you keep this up. I mean, just pragmatically, they're going to start getting crappy at some point.
Even Pixar has had some duds.
It has, although yes, they have. But they're not connected, regardless of whatever cracked article or BuzzFeed article you read last week. The Pixar movies aren't all connected.
That's true.
Professional Geek, do you know people who think that all the Pixar movies are secretly in the same universe?
I know people who think it's a good theory. I don't know anybody who is really wedded to it as something that in a Kennedy assassination sort of way.
Right. Okay. I also want to digress for a second, and I can't think of anything less cool than just patting on the back like the biggest corporation in moviedom right now. Nevertheless, is there a more exciting movie studio and smarter movie studio in existence right now than Walt Disney, which has Marvel, Lucasfilm, and Pixar, on top of the fact that it had just come out with Frozen and is making really good of its own and Wreck-It Ralph, and is making really phenomenal animation in its own house. I mean, that is an organization that has consolidated all the great talent and promise. I mean, it's really ridiculous. Yeah. And Universal's doing great work too, and they can pretend they're on the same level, but the Minions and Fast and Furious and Jurassic World do not actually compare to Star Wars, the Avengers, and Pixar. It's a whole other...
Vin Diesel wants you to take that back.
I bet he does. I bet he does. And you know me, Andy. I like Fast and Furious movies.
I know you do. You're a right-thinking American. Absolutely.
But nevertheless. So I don't know how to talk about this. I feel like, Kevin...
Yes.
I don't consider myself a geek. I mean, I geek out about Andy's face disagrees.
Yeah.
My face does disagree.
I consider myself a big movie fan. I've always felt like a big movie fan. But geek always, to me, implies a certain love of a certain genre. Like I've never been into Joss Whedon. I've liked certain things Joss Whedon has done, but I've never been a Joss Whedon guy. Let me finish.
Sure.
I love the Marvel movies. I love the Marvel movies currently. And if any of them were about marbles, that would be fantastic. I love the Marvel movies. I almost did it again. I love the Marvel movies currently, but I just think they're really good movies.
I would have Marvel Marbles.
Marvel Marbles?
Yeah.
Or Marvel movies.
We have Pogs. Alf's back.
Alf's back.
In Pog form.
No.
Anyways, but I don't feel like a geek in that sense, and Andy can say differently, but that's okay. I've always felt more like a movie fan, and part of that was I just like movies, just in general. I mean, I saw Angry Birds, not because because it was a movie and it was in my face. And Andy and I are about to do a whole episode after this about movies that we saw so other people didn't have to, and I love that stuff. But I guess what I want to say is I almost want permission. I don't know what it is. I feel like, and I can speak for people, many others, who are on the outside of this whole comic book thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have tried multiple times to get into comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And God love them. I'm sure they're great. And I'm going to watch Preacher, and I've read the comic. I've read the first of the books. Walking Dead, I've seen the show. I've never read the comics. I've tried to get into Spider-Man when I was a kid. I've tried to get into Dark Knight and get into... it's just not... Dude, it ain't happening. But I almost like... It's like... But I'm so grateful that for its existence right now in movies and what it's doing. But I guess I want some kind of either permission or... I don't know what I'm looking for. I guess I want to speak out loud. I don't feel like I'm one of you all, but I'm really grateful for the fact that you're present and doing what's happening. I don't know if that makes sense.
Can I just add? Can I just add one thing? Because Phil, I don't. My face disagrees with you, but less than you might think.
Sure.
I would just and Kevin, I'd love your take on this as well. People of our age, and I would go anywhere from like early 30s to mid to late 40s when I say that. We grew up or came of age. When you say, I'm not a geek, I'm just a movie fan, I get it. But like, to me, that's another flavor of geekdom, right? Like, the way that we respond to Ghostbusters, the way we respond to E.T., all right? And yes, E.T. is an all-time great movie regardless, but Amblin Entertainment means something to us in a way that, movies didn't necessarily in the 60s, right? You had the Bond franchise, and it's not about franchises. I don't want to say that. Like, The Goonies isn't a franchise. The Princess Bride isn't a franchise yet. But that is right, terrifying thought.
Yeah.
But that is if they can clone Andre the Giant, if they can bring him back to life, I'm up for it. Yeah, I'm a Marvel movie geek because I like the movies, but that's because they're good movies, right? I love movies, and I can talk about movies because, I ate a lot of popcorn, it was good. But I can also, the thing that makes me a geek about it is I can also say, you know what? Morricone's score for that movie really evoked blah 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 blah, and and Roger Deakins is an amazing cinematographer who works a lot with the Coen brothers, blah 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 blah, stuff like that. Like the depth of knowledge, I think, is what makes somebody.
I guess I almost and I guess so that's interesting. I think I geek out on personalities.
Sure.
So I'm a Coen brothers Like, I want to marry Zophras because Mary Zophras has done costume design for the Coen brothers for 20 years. And I want to meet Roger Deakins because Roger Deakins has been the camera guy except for one movie.
Right.
For every movie since Miller's Crossing. Right. Miller's Crossing was Barry Sonnenfeld. That was the last. They worked with Barry Sonnenfeld for the first part. And stuff like that. Tarantino, there's people where I'm interested in the people that they work with and I want to know, I'm interested in their stable. And to some degree, I'm even like that, lesser degree, but in its own way about David Mamet. I just watched State and Maine again the other day just because I could. But so I guess I understand. But I guess the things that people generally geek about aren't the things that I'm geeking out about.
It's
funny. I geek out about Bob Dylan and The Sopranos, but it's not as cool to geek out about The Sopranos as it is about Breaking Bad and The Wire. I love Bob's Burgers, but I don't geek out about Archer. And Archer's fine, but I don't geek out about it. And I like the comic book movies, but I have no interest in reading the books. I don't know. I guess so. You're right. I hear you. But geek has a certain when you work at a place like Kevin works, I get a feeling like there's I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't fit in. I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure why that matters. And I'm not sure why that matters, by the way. Just FYI. For some reason, it matters to me. I guess, what? Let me say this, and this is what, and then Kevin, maybe you can respond to this. Because I feel like there's a protectiveness around these things, a proprietary attitude towards the comic books that and towards Game of Thrones that I, as someone who just enjoys the TV or just enjoys the movie, somehow that ain't enough.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's an absolutely. I feel that way about a lot of things myself. probably know quite a bit more about comic books than you do because you just don't read them and you don't like them. But there are a million people who know a ton more than I do, and that around whom I feel like uninformed. I think the reason. First of all,
don't those people worry you a little bit? That was I got my answer.
I'm usually too busy feeling self-conscious.
Right. No, totally. Because if you're in that world, you're like, I got to get better at this.
Like, oh shit, I got to read Infinity, whatever. Here's the thing. I think what happened with the advent of the internet, what we wound up seeing was this, and we're in the midst of it now still, and it doesn't, I think it's showing the cracks, but we wound up in this advent of science fiction, comic book, geekery stuff, whatever you want to call it, being sort of made popular, and now we're living in the thick of it, with every movie have like 20 comic book movies a year when there used to be one or two, and they all sucked, right?
That's true.
And that happened, and I think when that happened, the way things used to be is you would go to comic book conventions, or you would go to hang out with your friends in whatever chat room that you were in, and knowledge was at a premium. The encyclopedic awareness of the thing that you chose for it to be your thing was at a premium, and there was a lot of shitty gatekeeping, and there still is. A lot of that gatekeeping was aimed at women, and you had the sort of the fake geek girl thing where men would say, well, she can't possibly be as into comic books or Star Wars or whatever as I am because she's a girl.
Because of her ovaries, people. Read the Bible.
It's all in the Bible. There's a whole chapter about Spider-Man.
Ovaries, yeah.
Yeah, and what is? Oh man. Anyway,
no.
So, pull up. Here. A boy.
There's too many of them. No, but let me say that we talk about that a lot, of that gatekeeping a lot in terms of gender, but it wasn't exclusively aimed at women. I've had it aimed at me a lot. I've had people laugh at me because I didn't know enough about some character. I've felt shut out of conversations because I didn't know enough about some comic book series. Yeah. And I think what happened as a reaction to that was people started talking about the word geek and geekdom and whatever as they tried to shift the narrative and shift the focus from the amount which you loved, the amount which you knew about something versus the amount which you loved something. So now I think we kind of live in a world where you can say, I'm a giant Marvel geek, and you still haven't read a lot of the movies, but you still haven't read a lot of the comics, but you really love the movies, and you really love the characters, and you think they're really cool. I think we are, and so, Phil, I think what you're experiencing right now is sort of a similar thing to what I experienced in my younger years when I was not as knowledgeable as I felt like I should have been about certain things. When my my encyclopedic awareness of whatever was not high enough. And you're now feeling like, well, I don't really like comic books. I'm not really into comic books, so I feel like kind of an outsider. And let me say, first of all, that happens to me still. Everybody in my office loves anime. I think I don't want to be totally open about my feelings about anime, except to say most of it, the vast majority of it, I just don't like it. It just bores me. I don't get it. I watch it and I'm like, this is not, there's nothing about this for me to grab onto.
Right.
And I have
tentacles.
Yeah, no. Hey man, I love me a tentacle. But
right?
That's our show, folks.
Even the plurality of tentacles in anime, well, it doesn't grab me. It doesn't really do it for me. And so I kind of feel that way a lot. And I think like, well, maybe is there something, something about me? But I mean, ultimately, what you like is what you like.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly. At some point, you just throw up your hands and say, "Hey, I love what I love."
Yeah.
Or you just throw up.
Yeah, and even I don't self-identify as a geek because I kind of feel like it's kind of a silly thing to do.
Right.
I have my tribes, I have my various groups of friends who are interested in various things, and I feel like as soon as I start self-identifying as a geek, that puts all of these pressures on me,
Right.
um, to be
Dude.
into anime and to be into manga and to be into
Yeah.
a lot of crap that I'm not into. I don't play that many video games. I've played like a handful of video games that I really like, but I'm not into video games.
Yeah.
Right.
It's.
I always thought I was until I met people who were, and then I was like, oh, it turns out I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, in a big way, and this is gonna be the most pompous thing that I will say. Probably,
Yes.
No, I can't wait.
Bring it.
Hey, I just kind of consider myself like a quality geek. Like,
Here's the deal. That is pompous as all hell, but I'm so on board with you,
Kevin.
Right?
Like, what I want to say is like with comic books. Like, okay, so first of all,
We are
the
your
closest
people.
The closest thing to liking anime I can get is liking the animated sequence in Kill Bill Volume 1. That's the closest to anime that I can get to. But part of it is, so it's like, part of my problem with not liking comic books, they're not very good. Like, they're not well written by and large. And like all the women are just big booby monsters. And no, they're all big booby monsters. Like, they're all these big, like it's ridiculous. And
I've got it.
And just gonna keep saying it. No, let me say it again.
Please, Phil, go on about big booby monsters.
And I won't. Okay, for instance, like I read the first book of The Preacher. I want to read about the next two. I haven't read them, but like I'm excited for the show to come out, kind of. Except it so feels like a British guy trying to write American.
Oh my God!
It feels like it.
That is the encapsulate. I actually love Preacher. I love the comic series. It's one of my favorites. But I also kind of hate it.
Yeah.
For that very reason. It very there's one part where Jesse, who's this deep Texas guy, uses the word Fortnite, and it's just like what? No.
And as you all know, and most of the people listening know, I'm a professionally religious person. When they don't know, they don't need to. They do whatever they want. But if they wanted to just be smart, like he should have gotten an American consultant, and he should have gotten a religious consultant, and just like it's things like when I'm watching the Walking Dead show, and this guy's an Episcopal priest, and he's reading from the King James Bible. Well, no, he wouldn't be. He'd be using a different translation. That seems small to you, or like some of the things like that he quotes and he talks about. I'm just like, don't use I'm an Episcopal priest, so I'm saying like, don't use us. Like, use someone else, and that's okay. But like I'm not offended, but I'm sort of like, just know what you're doing. Like, I don't go around pretending I'm this. But it is funny, by the way, this whole conversation, Kevin, like just to give you a little clue into my life, the Episcopal Church, of which I am a part, is so similar to the comic book geekery world. There are so many gatekeepers and so much special language and so much special secret handshakes. I have a friend from seminary, but there's actually a term, cradle Episcopalian, like as in you didn't convert to Episcopalianism. You were one growing, like when you were born, you were a cradle Episcopalian. So like I have a friend from seminary who, because he's a cradle Episcopalian and I came into it later in life, referred to me as a mudblood. Like,
wow.
Like, I mean, he was kidding.
First of all, that's really clever.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it is.
That's good.
He's very clever. His name is Chris Robinson. He's been on the show, and he's a huge comic book fan. And I borrowed his Harry Potter books to get through the series. And by the way, he wouldn't let me have them until I'd finished he's like, I can't let you have this book because you'll stay up all night reading it, and you need to get your homework done, Phil. He was really beautiful. But like he was joking, but he was speaking a truth about how we are within my tradition. So like I understand that gatekeeperness and the ability, and that a certain identity, that they're out of that can actually come a snobbery. And if it's possible to just be pro-quality and anti-snob at the same time, that's where I hope to be.
We strive for.
Well, that's what I do for me, because like I would say I'm kind of a quality geek too. Yeah. I think, and I tend to believe that I have good taste, which sounds snobby, but at the same time, that good taste can go beyond the bounds of like I like a good fart joke. Like you don't need to it doesn't need to be, and I try to be inclusive and all that.
I'm farting right now.
Phil,
see, I'm laughing.
Phil, it's a very interesting thing you just brought up, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's from the Book of Revelations, isn't it? Book of Revelations.
When religious people call it Revelations instead of Revelation, I get furious.
It is literally my favorite thing. It is my favorite thing to poke Phil with.
Fair enough. I have an idea that I'm interested in bringing into this that might be the wrap up. I'm not sure if it is.
Okay.
But I want to throw it in there. And I'm working it through as I say it. I'm verbally processing this, but I will do my best not to diarrhea this thing out. Okay, check this out. Used to be that studios owned actors and owned directors, and each studio had a feeling. I mean, this is where we get the idea from. Remember the good old days of we were never alive for it, but Universal Monster Pictures.
Yeah.
So things like that. And you had the sense of what, by the way, and to some degree that spilled out into television. CBS movies have a feel, shows have a feel, ABC shows have a feel, Fox shows, especially when Fox was still first came out, definitely had a feel. We were seeing that. Then kind of everything went its own way. The 80s and early 90s were kind of crazy for television, but in movies, there was no, in my mind, identity per studio. They'd have little sub studios, like Miramax, and but realistically, a studio, unless it was Walt Disney Cartoons, didn't have a feel.
Right. Yeah. When Orion died, it was like, okay. I mean, I remember the spinny thing that turned into Orion, but
right. You were like, okay, there are other film
list
studios.
5 Orion movies that you know because they're Orion movies.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like,
I remember taking a class. In 2002 and talking about that very phenomenon. And the teacher of the class, he used Disney as an example, and then he sort of challenged us to think of another example.
Right.
And nobody in the class could. And he said, well, that's reasonable because that's right. And at the time, MTV sort of was still kind of a thing. So he said maybe MTV could be. But anyway, yes, go on.
So then what happens is TV might lose this thread a little bit for a while in the 90s, but this goes back again for me to The Sopranos. HBO creates, it's not TV, it's HBO. Sopranos is the flagship for that, and then comes Curb Your Enthusiasm, and then comes Deadwood, and then comes The Wire, although The Wire was a little bit at the same time, around the same time, but they all sort of emerge, and then there becomes this idea of an HBO show, which, by the way, 10, 15 years later, we're still, in fact, now they've reaffirmed it. I mean, right now, you've got this Game of Thrones, Girls, Silicon Valley, Veep sort of thing that's happened again, and will a show live up to the HBO, and FX definitely has an FX thing happening.
Yes.
AMC would love to.
AMC is trying to, I think, but
and they've stumbled onto having some of the best shows in the history of television, so good for them. But and Walking Dead, but buzzing. But the reason I bring it up is even comic books. You were a Marvel person or a DC Comics person. But what's happened now with what we're talking about, and it's become really clear to me with Avengers 2.5, Captain America Civil War, is there is such a thing as a studio, and you made me think about this, there is such a thing as a look. Marvel is a studio. It belongs to Disney, but it's a studio, and it's got a look, and it's got a thing that's happening, and you are part of the stable, and you belong to this. It's the closest thing to the golden age of cinema, or whatever it was. I don't know, golden age, whatever. Is the closest thing to those 20s and 30s Casablanca, Capra works for these people, Hitchcock works for these people. Bogart is owned by these people. It's the closest thing to that, because you've got to imagine Chris Evans has to stay in a specific kind of shape and not have a beard so that he can get ready for this next show that's coming up. And that's got to be part of his consideration for the next 10 years, right? And so we're seeing that, and now you actually can be a Marvel person or a DC person in film. Although if you were a DC person in film,
I feel very bad for you. You can be a DC person in television because all the best DC stuff is happening on television.
It is. I mean, it is interesting that that the Dark Knight series is DC, and it was what it was, and it is still just a phenomenal. Even if people didn't like the third one as much as they could have, or blah 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 blah, phenomenal series.
Phenomenal.
And yet it's just that, but that was auteur. That's not the right word for it, or the right pronunciation.
But they took all the wrong things from it. Like, oh, it was dark. Well, because it's Batman, right? And like
not
Deadpool,
just Batman, but the Dark Knight version of Batman,
right?
Like specifically the darkest thing
right.
imaginable.
And Deadpool is like, should we take from this that they were true to the characters and they made it fun? No, we should take from it that there's a lot of blood and there's swearing. Ooh, Wolverine 3 is going to be an R-rated movie. I mean, okay, because that could work, but like, stop it. Stop it.
Yeah. And similarly, I think the other wrong lesson they took was that auteur thing, because, Phil, you called the Batman movies that, which is fair, because it's
Nolan.
Totally accurate because of Nolan. And
and Goyer worked on that too, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Those guys, they have a thing.
And now they're sort of doing the same thing with Zack Snyder, or at least they were trying to, and that's like obviously like a massively giant mistake. But I mean, in contrast to Marvel, where there is, I mean, I think you would call Kevin Feige like a godfather, like a sort of head creative director. Yeah. But certainly he's not, and as I said earlier, he's nothing close to an auteur, if you could even apply that term to a producer. He's someone who says, we want to hit these beats. We want to get writers and directors who will play ball. And that's the other thing about those movies, is that they not like the big directors that they get are strong storytellers, but not strong visually. And the smaller directors that they get are sort of like these almost, I want to say working class, but that's not a good term because these guys get paid insane amounts of money. But, sort of more journeyman
directors. Journeyman working directors, right.
Who will sort of toe the line and do what they're told.
And that's why Edgar Wright did not work out for Ant-Man.
And that's why Edgar Wright didn't work out. I mean, like, look,
I think awesome for both. I
think you can hold two ideas in your head. The idea that Edgar Wright is a really amazing filmmaker who has made some absolutely spectacular movies, and that he was not right for Marvel. I think you can hold those ideas in your head, and that not having him on Ant-Man was the right choice. That's sort of a diversion. But yeah, I think I was mostly just trying to verbosely agree with you, Phil.
Well, I like both of those things. I like you agreeing, and I like you being verbose.
Mostly the agreeing thing, but yeah.
They're both good.
Mostly that.
Yeah. So in conclusion,
Civil War.
The Sopranos is the greatest show of all time. Oh, right. So, go buy the new Bob Dylan album. Sopranos is the greatest show of all time. Civil. You know what? Here's the thing. Here's why. I'm really interested now in this idea. Like, now Kevin Feige is one of those guys. Is it Feige or Feige? What is it?
Feige, I believe.
Yeah. Great. So now Kevin Feige is like, he's like a Zanuck, or like an old school movie producer. It's like watching Hail Caesar, the recent Coen Brothers movie. Best case scenario of a studio system. Best and worst in that movie, but still, like, the idea that that the studio is its own world and not just a conglomeration of different money-making pieces. Like, you're kind of seeing Marvel take on that mantle in its own way. I'd be really interested to see if that could be contagious. My money's on no, but it's kind of cool to see it.
Yeah. Can I just say that, to tie those two things together, when I saw Hail Caesar, for about the first third of it, I thought that Alden Ehrenreich was Sebastian Stan. I'm not proud of this, but
Sebastian Stan? Who's Sebastian Stan? I don't get it, unfortunately. Andy?
He's the Winter Soldier. Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier.
Oh, they look so much alike, though.
It's true.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I didn't think they were the same person, but I get it.
Right.
Yeah. Did you see that picture online where they put they photo swapped Sebastian Stan's face onto Luke Skywalker, and it was almost identical?
That was I still can't talk about it. It's real.
I'm upset because both of you have seen it and you haven't shared it with me. So please do that when we.
I feel terrible.
You should feel real bad.
I feel fine. I feel okay about it.
That's fair.
I'm still at the place, after all we've said, I'm still at the place where when I see a new preview. Like, so Doctor Strange, right? Saw the preview, and I was just like, all right, I guess I'll see another Marvel movie. Like, I'm gonna see it, but I'm not excited. I wasn't excited for Captain America Civil War, by the way.
Sure.
It's great. I had a great time. I would like to see it again.
Yeah.
But I was just like, all right, let's do this, I guess.
No, I got you.
So it's weird. Like, I'm not excited at all for Doctor Strange. At all. But
Benedict Cumberbatch is enough to make me excited for it.
I reached peak Cumberbatch a couple of years ago, I think.
Did you?
I think he's fine. I think he's great. I think people who like him I don't disagree with them. I think it was right after, somewhere between Sherlock and Star Trek, where I was like, okay, I like Benedict Cumberbatch, but if he quietly fades away, I'll be okay. I'll be fine. I don't need more Benedict Cumberbatch.
Did you see the Imitation Game?
I don't need more Eddie Redmayne.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Right, I think okay. I've been given these two options. Who would you like screw, marry, kill?
Oh.
I think I'd go. I think I would kill Eddie Redmayne, and that makes me sad.
Wait, is it just Eddie Redmayne and Benedict Cumberbatch, or who's the third?
No. There's a. Okay. I don't know.
So you don't have to kill him. You could screw him. You don't have to kill him.
Alden Ehrenreich. I don't know. I don't care. I don't care. Josh Brolin.
I would no. Let's say it's just those two. I would kill one and
marry the other.
No, I'd probably screw the other, and here's why. Not because I'm gay, but because I could just be done with them after that. If I married them, they'd be there forever. Like, do I want to spend the rest of my life with Benedict Cumberbatch?
Wow. Maybe you do, Mrs. Cumberbatch. Maybe you do.
It's a fair point.
Maybe you do.
I feel like this got a little blue. This is bluer than we normally get.
It's true, Kevin. I blame you.
It's not. It's by the way not gayer than we normally get.
That's also true.
But certainly bluer.
I think I reached peak Redmayne, which makes me sad because I really like him. But there's that. But
I just want him to take his mouth guard out. He has that sort of. He sort of looks like he always has a mouth guard in. He has that that look to his lip that I want to
try. Is that a genetic thing or is it a posture he has? Because if it's genetic, I try to stay away from those things because if I was a movie star, there'd be so many things they'd pick apart at me that it makes me want to cry. And he's a beautiful man. Let's be honest.
It's true. Yeah, that's true.
But is it genetic or is it just how he holds his face?
I assume it's how he holds his face.
Like I'm watching. I'm getting into House of Cards right now.
Yeah.
And Kate Mara. First of all, a very talented actor.
Sure.
Secondly, stunningly beautiful. Like,
she is.
Eye painful, hurt face, beautiful. But she does this thing where she opens her mouth open a lot, and I'm just like, just close it. Just close your mouth. Just close it. And it doesn't detract from how good she is at her job. She is phenomenally good at her job, and she is, like, need I say again, stunning, but just come on, just close it up.
I think with Redmayne, it's the combination between it being a feature of his face, which I wouldn't make fun of somebody for having a feature on their face that was off, right. But I think it's the combination of the feature of the face and the way he holds his mouth.
I hear you.
So,
it's like every once in a while, like Denzel Washington, you just want to be like, I get it, stop chewing on the inside of your cheek. I got it. Like, you're amazing. You are amazing, Denzel. You are one of the greats. Stop chewing on the inside of your cheek.
I can tell you when I hit peak Redmayne. Did you see this viral video where he's doing a monologue of Holly Golightly's from Breakfast at Tiffany's?
Oh God! Have
you seen this? He's doing an Audrey Hepburn monologue from Breakfast at Tiffany's, and the internet went insane for it. And I was like, awesome! What a cool idea! Sure. And I watched it, and it was just a dude reciting the lines, and he was fine, but I didn't believe I was watching Holly Golightly. I didn't believe.
You know what? We haven't said this yet, but this is what a lot of what we're saying actually is about. Sometimes one of the worst things about stuff. How about that? One of the worst things about stuff.
Yeah,
I hate stuff.
Is the fans of that stuff. Like Cumberbatch is fine. But but Cumberbatch's life is exhausting. Right?
This is another conversation.
It's another conversation, and maybe it's our next one. Eddie Redmayne's fine. He's great. Is he talented? Of course he is. Is he beautiful? Of course he is.
Yeah.
Is he life? No. Settle down.
Right.
Like,
relax.
Yeah, if anybody deserves that, it's that guy whose name I can't remember, who Andy and I both love, Michael Shannon. If anybody, it's Michael Shannon.
True. Yeah, that's true.
He deserves that ridiculous credit. But anyways, that's a whole other.
So
wrap it up.
In summation, Kevin, if you could get on the Guild season 7, that would be. I'll
take care of that.
Yeah, that would be great. Sorry.
Yeah.
I brought it back around because we were talking about it earlier.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you. Kevin, thank you so much. This is fascinating. And folks, I'm sort of sorry that we did a Civil War podcast and barely talked about the movie, but by that I mean I'm not sorry at all, because this was gold.
I think if we had just done a Civil War podcast, it would have been an hour of me talking about Elizabeth Olsen, and I don't think anybody needs that. Elizabeth Olsen, she does not need it. No, she is all set. The last thing she needs. I'd be like, the soulfulness in her eyes. Phil, just stop. And the moment when she makes the decision, Phil, enough.
Right. Hawkeye hits you with one of those electrocuting arrow arrays.
I would deserve it. There's something, that woman. She's getting close. She has the potential to be the female Oscar Isaac. I think she could go to that direction.
Well said.
That's
potential. Potential.
I know. That's
much potential has been ruined in this world.
It's true.
I believe she's got great potential.
Kevin, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating, and
love you, and you do great work.
This is great.
I love you guys. I love being here. Thank you.
And so, Phil, anything to say?
Kevin, get more people to listen to our podcast.
That's it. Yeah, Kevin, get more people to listen to our podcast.
And then we'll make more episodes.
Indeed, that's true.
I would say the gauntlet for me, and Andy, I know Andy really wants me to shut up. I don't care. The gauntlet for me is I really want you and everybody else to know, that is new to the show, that we once literally watched every single Mel Gibson movie in chronological order, and then did an episode of them once a week for a whole year. And they're all available, and you can go back and listen to Project Melway. What a crazy thing! And we're geniuses, I guess is what I want to say. But anyways, and we're going to do it again soon, in theory, with another person. That's true. Not Mel Gibson. We're done.
We're not doing it again with Mel Gibson. That's not going to happen.
My girlfriend and I are talking about doing it with Jeremy Irons. And we would call it the Jeremy's Iron podcast.
Of course you would.
I love it. I love it, but I'm not going to watch Batman versus Superman again. So I couldn't do that.
I get to see Dungeons and Dragons for the first time.
I've never seen it. Worth it more than BVS. BVS time 2. No.
The things that Andy and I had to watch to get through Project Melway. Sure. The things that we had to watch.
So full. Mrs. Soulful.
Oh God, Mrs. Soulful. The River.
I didn't see What Women Want, but I assume from the trailers.
Oh, it's so good.
That the answer is Mel Gibson.
Isn't that the answer to every question?
It's not Mel Gibson.
That's accurate. That's accurate. That's accurate. Okay. Clearly, Kevin, you think up more things to talk about, which doesn't seem to be a problem for any of the three of us.
We love having you on the show. You're a great guest.
We will bring you back. This is awesome. Thank you so much for special guest Kevin Ott and Phil Duvall. I am Andy Roth. We are Second Breakfast. Thanks so much. We'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
The most important meal of the day, Second Breakfast.